The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from the top of the escarpment in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, overlooking the beautiful Lake Ontario. And from our studios here, we can see Burlington, we can see Hamilton, we can see the skyline of Toronto. Wow, what a great view. This is Canada Day weekend, so to all our Canadian listeners around the world, happy Canada Day. Play safe, be happy, and remember, if you drink, do not drive a car, do not drive a boat, do not drive a motorcycle, do not drive anything, because the law enforcement agencies will be out in force as they should be, drinking and driving. A bad mix. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Shane Sirois. He has been helping families and individuals for over 30 years. He has a rare 100% success rate at getting rid of nasty parasitic entities. His understanding of the mechanics of what allows a haunt is untouched. He gets called in when investigators, demonologists, and clergy fall short in providing relief, and he has succeeded each and every time. Shane doesn't stop there. He also is a researcher of UFOs, alien, and cryptids. Shane is currently involved in several areas that have UFO sightings, Sasquatch sightings, and shadow people sightings. He is at the center of some of the biggest cases. You can read more about him at his website at trueghost.com. Shane, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks for having me. It's a pure honor.
100% success rate. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I first started this work, I wanted to unlearn everything I thought I knew, any book I read, any movie I saw, and I started this work as a young guy, and it just a long childhood interest and a thirsty mechanical aptitude of needing to understand how all this works. I had experiences with paranormal occurrences and also other things concerning like alien events and everything, and just needing to know exactly how it works. And so when I started the work, I put in a process to identify trends, so I could try to learn, because I realized that nobody really seemed to have it nailed down, because I saw so many times where clergy would go in, because that seems to be the go-to, and
sure.
But yet it didn't work, and sometimes it would work for a short period of time, and then it would come back worse, and sometimes it wouldn't work at all, but then sometimes it would work. So why didn't it work sometimes, and why did it work sometimes? So I didn't want to follow the same footsteps, because it wasn't providing a success there, a solid success in getting rid of these things. So when I put this process down to identify trends, I was looking for everything. I wasn't just looking at what was going on inside the house. I was looking outside the house. I was looking at, natural elements. I was looking at behavior of the family. And I started to connect some dots. And what I realized is the people that are being haunted by negative entities, something happened to trigger to trigger that. Something happened in their lives that was life altering. And I'll say, in the event of negative parasitic hauntings, some people call them poltergeists, some people call them demons. There's all kinds of names for them. I call them parasitic entities because that's their behavior. That's exactly what they do. That's their personality. They're feeding off of our emotional energies and attracted by those emotional frequencies. So what I started to realize, it's not the house that's haunted, it's the people that are being haunted. And I realized that a long time ago. And so what I started to do is kind of like, I would have to reverse engineer their haunt, if you will. And so I would say, okay, for instance, I'm good friends with Paulino. I know Paulino's been a guest on your show. Yes. I saw, and you've had many guests. I looked through your log there. I was blown away. But anyway, I met Paulino in 1998, and here's a cool story that kind of will explain what I'm talking about. So I got contacted by a gentleman in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Like I said, around 1998, and he was being attacked viciously, waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a disfigured woman inches from his face, and it actually made his hair turn white. He ran into the bathroom, laid in a fetal position for like an hour and a half, he said, and he got up, splashed cold water in his face, looked in the mirror, his hair was completely white. And had I not been there, just, I left late that night, went home. He called me early that morning. I went right back down there, and he looked like he aged like 100 years. And now this is a guy that ran in the bathroom in the fetal position. And this is a Vietnam vet. This is not a a coward. Yes. And so anyway, the first time I went there, Paul didn't make it the first time. Actually, Paul was assisting this guy. He before contacting Paul, he had his Roman Catholic priest come in, did a thing. It didn't work. The Roman Catholic priest came back, stood on the porch. The guy, his name is Norman, met him out on the porch, and the priest said, "I'm sorry, I can't go in there. I got sick last time, and things started happening in my home. I can't go back in your house. I'm sorry." And he drove off. So Paul got called in because the neighbors were they called the police because there were strange, loud sounds and screams and all kinds of weird stuff coming from that apartment. When the police got there, Norman and his girlfriend weren't there. The apartment was empty, but yet there was all kinds of strange sounds concerning many, neighbors that enough to call the police. The police called Paulino, and Paulino went down. This gentleman heard of me also in the midst of his interaction with Paul and everything, and asked me, would I mind working with this guy? And I said, sure. I didn't know who he was at the time. Mm-hmm. I never met Paul. But on the second visit, I finally met him, and we just hit it off. We've been brothers like ever since. But so what I did was I spent the first day just kind of feeling it out, talking to the guy a little bit. And then I basically asked him, I said, how long have you lived here? He says, my girlfriend's lived here 11 years. I've lived here for 6 years. I said, how long have you been being attacked? He said, just the last 2 years. And I'm talking vicious. Like, first time I walked in his house, a lamp flew across the room like 12 to 15 feet, hit him in the leg. And he was just like, see, that's what I'm talking about. He said it so nonchalantly that event was so minor compared to what he's been dealing with. He didn't jump up and say, wow, it was just like, see, that's what I'm saying. And we actually, I had a gentleman who told me he was an experienced investigator, wanted to learn. He was older than me, but he wanted to learn from me. He said, you seem to have a good success rate, good reputation. I'd like to learn from you. So I invited him to this case, and what he witnessed in this home blew his mind. He ended up going nuts almost. I mean, he lost his wife, he lost his home, and this is a guy that made 6 figures. He lost his job. He's living in a trailer park in a very rundown city. What he witnessed there just blew his mind, even though he thought he believed in it. But when he finally saw stuff happening in front of him, some high level stuff, it just blew his whole world out. So anyways, getting back, so the guy, he says, my girlfriend's lived here for 11 years. I lived here for 6 years. He's been being attacked for the last 2 years. I said, what happened 2 years ago that changed this environment, changed you? Something happened something dramatic must have happened in your life to affect you emotionally that made you become vulnerable and connect you with these things. It's like a frequency connection. It's like a two-way radio. When we're lowered emotionally, we're connected to these things like a two-way radio. So when we elevate our emotions, we change our frequency by changing our thinking, and we break the connection, and it can't communicate with us or interact with us. And so he says, well, it started happening 3 weeks after I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And as we know, pancreatic cancer is pretty much a death sentence. I mean, there's no good things that come out of it.
That's right.
Yeah. So horrible. And so basically what happened was he was put on meds. So he can't work anymore, nor would I want to work with that, anyways. So put on meds, can't work, sitting at home, just dwelling on the fact that he's probably going to die. He's also a Vietnam vet. He saw his friends blown up in front of him. He had some bad memories of that. Without nothing to occupy his internal dialogue, he was just running this stuff around in his head. It was just negative emotions.
Hey Shane, we're gonna have to take a bit of a cliffhanger here. I've got to take my break. Please stand by. Exonation. Our guest this hour is Shane Sirois, and his website is www.trueghost.com. Fascinating story. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, happy Canada Day, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Shane Sirois is my special guest this hour. His website is www.trueghost.com. Shane, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Continue that story. Like, my producer, Craig, on the other side of the glass, says he has goosebumps on his arms.
It's a good story. Wait till you hear the rest of it.
Oh, my gosh.
So, basically, so when he told me that, so he's just basically sitting at home dwelling on all this negativity and then, bad memories and the fact that he's probably going to die, and it lowers your emotional frequency, makes you, it initiates that connection. These parasitic entities can that's how they know how to mess with us, because they pick up on frequencies. They can read our thoughts that way, our emotions, and we actually believe them to be life forms and not just an angry ghost. And we can talk about more of that later.
Please.
But so this thing popped in and said, hey, this guy's vulnerable. I can mess with him. And then next thing that happens is they start doing stuff and you start giving it attention. When you give these things attention, you're giving it energy. So now it's going to be fed in two ways. Mm-hmm. And, you ever been standing in a mall or a store or somewhere and you're like, you feel like you're being watched and you look over and somebody's staring at you. It's because they're giving you energy. By giving you attention, they're giving you energy. It's the same thing. And so now he starts thinking about it all the time. It's in his internal dialogue. He's thinking about all the negative stuff, but he's also thinking about what's this thing going to do next, So I basically, this thing just came in and started toying with him. So I told him, here's what we have to do. We have to change your thinking, so we change your frequency and we break the connection. So you need to go for walks. Don't just sit here and think about all this negative stuff. Go for walks, volunteer at a soup kitchen, do something that makes you feel good about yourself, give you a more positive direction, something enjoyable, so you're not thinking of all your bad memories and you're in this pancreatic cancer.
This guy's got a lot on his mind.
And so he actually did that. He He volunteered at a soup kitchen. The soup kitchen was in the basement of an old stone church. It was the oldest stone church in Rhode Island, but for some reason was scheduled to be torn down. And he being a Roman Catholic said, no, and he led this fight to save the thing from being torn down. He was on the nightly news. He was on the front page of the paper.
Good for him.
Yeah, he had something positive, something, to drive him in a positive direction, something positive. And so not only did this entity just take off, I mean, like it didn't just fade off. It just was gone. It was like just taking a light switch and just shutting it off, disappeared instantly. Not only that, is right in that time period where the thing took off, he went to the doctors. They wanted to monitor the growth of his cancer and everything, and they did an X-ray, and they were blown away. This doesn't happen. His cancer completely disappeared off X-ray. No signs of cancer. He's still alive today.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The cancer and the entity disappeared at the same time.
You said life form before, that it may not be a spirit, but it could be a life form. Where does this life form come from, Shane?
We actually think they might be multiversal, because they seem to be able to come and go. And they seem to happen in the same areas where we're having what we call paranormal flap areas, where you're not just having a lot of haunted homes, you're having a lot of UFO sightings, you're having a lot of Sasquatch sightings, a lot of things that, you could. I spent my whole life out in the woods, and you don't see Sasquatch running around. I mean,
that's right.
And so they got to be coming and going from somewhere too, because there's no way in the world that they're living out in the woods somewhere. I don't believe that, but I do. There's so much evidence. I had an encounter. I never expected to have it. It was in Pennsylvania. Paulino and I were out. It was May of 2016, and this is I think it's like a 40-acre land owned by a family. There's 3 family homes on this property, and they've been seeing UFO since the 50s. They've been seeing Sasquatch since the 50s. One of the homes had shadow people that was terrorizing children and everything. So when we got told about this case, I said, okay, we'll go out there. We got to take care of those shadow people, and I did. First visit, I spent like an hour with those people. They haven't seen the shadow people since. And we got rid of those, and then. But we did get pictures of UFOs in the sky. We went to one of the homes where there was either a meteor crash or a UFO crash a long time ago, and Paul has like a sensitivity to like metals and stuff. So when we went there, I could start to see something was wrong with him, and he started looking anxious and just like he wasn't feeling well. And I said, "Are you all right?" He goes, "I need to go lay down. This doesn't happen to me." So he went back to the home, the main house that had a finished basement with, it's like a little apartment down there, and he went and laid down in one of the beds. And so I went down to the woods, and it was about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just a little bit after 3. And it's pouring rain, just like a Amazon force, just coming down so hard. And I'm trying to dry off. I got my heat cranked, and I think that's why what I seen, it didn't see me because, or didn't hear my truck idling because it was raining so hard. But about 100 to 150 feet or so to my 1 o'clock, as I'm getting my trail cams ready to set out for the night, something catches my eye, and I look over, and in this thin tree line with, the trees were spread out pretty good. I saw what looked like 3 black objects moving around, and they were moving peculiar, like the weirdest movement I've ever seen. I've never seen anything in the woods like this before. And so I'm just taking notice, and then I realize it's not 3 things, it's one thing. So I'm getting my camera ready. There's no way I can take a picture of it from where I'm at, my vantage point, and have it come out with the pouring rain. So I wanted to just fly up there, have my camera ready, and try to snap a photo of it. But before doing so, doing this a long time, I took note that there was a keep out sign, because that tree line was the property line of an adjoining property. There was a cornfield on the other side with no corn because it was May. And this thing was as tall as the top of the sign. So I said, okay, good. And then I hit the gas. I drive up there. I was up there in seconds, and the thing took off. And its arms were going like really high like this, and just massive, black, hairy, big, massive arms. It wasn't a bear. Bears don't run on two legs, and so I tried to cut it off. I went up the path and tried to cut it off. It was long gone. I backed back over to the tree. I walked up to the tree with my boots on. I'm 6 foot tall. This thing had to have been at least 7.5 to 8 foot tall, whatever it was. And I never expected to see this. I've been doing UFO, alien, and mostly, the ghost thing, paranormal stuff, my whole life. I touch on the Sasquatch thing here and there when it seems credible enough, but that just blew my mind. And Paul, September of the same year, ended up having his own encounter when we went back. And so, but what I'm saying is this area is what we call a flap area. You're having many, many things happening. You're having the cryptids, you're having UFO sightings, you're having a home that had shadow people. Yeah. And so they seem to go hand in hand. So it's got to be a multiversal thing, or a multi-world thing,
Let me ask you a question here. How did you get rid of the shadow people?
It's so simple. I mean, shadow people or the parasitic entities, if they're there doing no good, it's really simple. It's just an education that I give to the family. Paul says I just walked in and these things ran away because they're afraid of me, So, and that's happened. I've actually just gone to homes and they've taken off, and I never really had to spend much time with the family. But generally, what it is I have to change the dynamic of what's going on in their home, because there's a reason why that thing's there. They're like I said, they're literally parasites. They're being fed something in order to be there. If you take those things away, you starve them, they'll go somewhere else. So this is why the Ouija board works. This is why people get in trouble with the Ouija board. The Ouija board is nothing magical. There's nothing about it. It's just compressed paper or wood or whatever. There's nothing about it. But it is a tool that concentrates your attention on the possibility of an interaction, and these things love that. They need attention. They need attention. They need negativity or a vulnerable state of being, and they need fear. Without those three things, they can't bother you. They simply cannot. So that's how I get rid of them. I educate the family on those three factors: attention, negativity or a vulnerable state of being. The attention also turns into an obsession, usually too, and then the negativity or a vulnerable state of being, and then the fear is usually that's the goal. That's the ultimate goal for these things. They want to get you to the state of fear. That fear frequency or the fear energy is the strongest, and that's their initial. That's their exact goal, is to get you there, and they will do it as long as you're giving them the other two things. They become nastier and nastier, and they know how to play every single person.
All right, Shane, stand by, buddy. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Shane Sirois is our special guest, and his website is trueghost.com. If you'd like to get a copy of the current edition of the X Chronicles newspaper with our compliments, it's available online at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And for all the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the program guide on the X-Zone TV channel, that's exclusively on SimulTV, visit www.simultv.com. That's SIMULTV.com. I'm Rob McConnell. Shane Sirois and I return after this news break. Don't go away. Exonation, Shane Sirois is our guest. TrueGhost.com is his website. And Shane was telling us about this fascinating case. It had the shadow people. There was a Bigfoot. It was in an area that you classify as a paranormal flap area. Now, do these flap areas come and go, or are they permanent when they land somewhere, so to speak?
They do seem to move sometimes, but basically, you know what's interesting, and I noticed this a long time ago. I made an article about this back in the late '90s. That I noticed over the years that because like I told you, I had that process to identify trends. I started to realize that my most legitimate haunts, the ones that, not where something just happening like once a month, but things are happening like multiple times a week on a regular basis, the most legitimately active haunts all had rivers or streams near the property. And these paranormal flap areas, the same thing. Also, not a coincidence. I know you're familiar with the missing 411 case files.
Yeah.
People going missing under strange circumstances. They also all have rivers and streams nearby, and even David Paulides in his work and says that water has something to do with it. He doesn't know what, but it has something to do with it.
Well, there's a theory there that we could put forward at this time. Water is used to create hydroelectric, right? You get water running, it causes a field. Is it possible that this field that is caused by running water, or whether it be in streams or in ley lines, acts as a gateway to another dimension?
Yeah, and I think it's more than just energy, though, but I think it is exactly what's happening. And I don't know if it's manipulating frequencies, light frequencies, energies, but it's definitely, I know for sure it's definitely manipulating all three of those things in some way that makes the crossover easier, because I just see it time and time again. And now what's interesting is in these areas that are conducive like that, because they're being fed by these natural elements like the rivers and streams, and we're in this flap area. What I also started noticing were the people living in the home being attacked by something negative usually had something going on in the home, whether it was a dysfunctional family, there was somebody going through something that made them vulnerable. So I did this happens a lot, but for instance, I'll tell this one story. I did an investigation a long time ago, and these people just said, we just want proof to show our family because we have activity in our home, and they think we're crazy, but it's not an angry ghost, so we don't want you to do nothing about it. It's very active here. We walk in a room, the light turns on for us. We walk towards a door, it opens for us. Things like that. And one time their child was out playing in a tree, fell out of the tree, broke its leg, and the mother she didn't hear the cries because she was in the laundry room with the washer and dryer going. She didn't hear. She turns around, and the child is sitting on their butt with the knees bent up, leaning up against the door frame, and holding the leg, and the leg was clearly broken really bad. And the mother's like, whoa, what happened? What happened? And the child said, the nice lady brought me in here, but there was no nice lady to be found. So this is what I'm talking about. So we did confirm there was activity going on. We provided what they wanted. And now years and years later, long time later, I get another phone call. I get a phone call or an email, can't remember which, saying, we're being attacked. Something is bad in our house. Something bad is going on. Can you come over here? So we scheduled a time. I went down, and I drove up, and I'm like, come on. It was the same house. But now the difference was the family that was living there now was a dysfunctional family. They had many issues going on between people that were living in the home, and it wasn't a good thing. So we dictate what comes through. I'm not going to say open door. I don't really like that, but kind of, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So let's use that. All right. What comes through that open door by the environment we maintain inside our home, they're attracted to our emotional energy. So if we're in a vulnerable state, then these parasitic entities, they're like vultures. They come right on in. And their ultimate goal, like I said, is to get you to the state of fear, and they're really good at it. So when the way I get the people that, I'm free, I don't charge anybody. But the way I get them to break it, and it works every single time. And what's different than the way other people do it and clergy do it, clergy and demonologists and all these other people, they'll go in there and try to fight the paranormal with the paranormal. So they're expecting, whether they're smudging or the prayer. And prayer is a very positive thing. But so people get upset when I talk about this. But here's the thing: you got to understand. If the prayer in the process, the religious process or whatever that they're doing, whatever type of religion or spiritual technique that they're using, if it didn't have the effect on the person, the afflicted, and change them emotionally to get them to thinking in the right way, to get them less fearful, to get them more positive, elevate their emotional frequencies, if the religion or the spiritual technique that they're using didn't accomplish that, then it's not going to work, and these things will come back and that's why and I realized that a long time ago. And sometimes those tactics do have an effect on people, and that's why it works. It works when it affects the person. So it's really treating the person and not the entity. The entity is going to be there no matter what, unless you can change the person's energy level and their vulnerabilities, and take away those components that we talked about. And go ahead.
Okay, so it's a matter of. So let me understand this if I can. It has nothing to do with a paranormal event. It's got something to do with a physical event or a psychological event that allows the alleged paranormal activity to happen?
Not exactly. There has to be natural components present to if we want on a heightened level, a more regular level, then usually there's natural elements that aid that process. But what initially attracts these things in is somebody in a vulnerable state, mm-hmm. or somebody paying it attention. That's why people using Ouija board get in trouble, because they start messing around with it, and they're telling this thing I'm going to play, I'm going to give you attention. And they'll say, okay, let's do it. And then next thing, these people are now become afraid. That's the ultimate goal, is to get the fear level. I tell people the story. It's in, the people I go to help. I said, think about it this way. If you're on a telephone and your child is pulling at your pant leg saying, mommy, 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 or daddy, 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 and you just stop your phone conversation, let them interrupt you, and you say, what, honey? And then they're going to interrupt you whenever they want. They're going to do it at will, and they're going to do it more frequently. If you gesture to the child to wait, you finish your phone conversation, the child's going to learn to wait, or they're going to go play somewhere else. And that these entities are the same way. You cannot give them attention, when they want it all the time, because it's just going to feed them. And they're just going to become more active. They're going to pester you more. And before you know it, they're nasty. And,
let me ask you this. Shane. Do these entities also do the same thing to animals?
Actually, yeah. I mean, we've seen plenty of times where animals are being tormented. I've seen animals fly across rooms. One time, like a cat was kicked. It looked like the cat was kicked in the butt. It was sitting there, and it looked like it was kicked in the butt because the butt slid forward and the thing went flying down the hallway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they do. And also that's the other thing. Why I believe these things are life forms, and there's just so much evidence to support that. But animals can see a different light spectrum than we can, and that's why they see things that we can't see. You see them staring at corners, dogs growling, trying to bite, up towards the ceiling and stuff, cats freaking out. They can see different things, different life forms, and different light spectrum that we can't. And I know you're familiar with probably the Santilli telescope.
Yes.
You're familiar with that, yes?
Yes, but tell our listeners about it.
Yeah, so basically, it was a telescope to look for dark energy or antimatter or whatever in the universe, and it's got a concave lens. It utilizes ultraviolet rays and all that. But what they started to see was what they said were terrestrial entities in our own atmosphere moving about. Some just look like streaks of light. Others, they look like cells, or they're saucer-like, but they look like almost like round cells or something, hovering around, like they say, power plants, thunderstorms, like they're trying to gather energy. I know it's controversial. There's some people that argue about this, this Santilli telescope findings when as far as the terrestrial entities go. But I mean, I seen some of the photos, and it's pretty. I mean, it seems like there's something to it, and so it's basically these things are able to see life forms that we can't see.
All right,
and
Shane, we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. Exonation Shane Sirois is our special guest this hour. His website is trueghost.com, and Shane and I will be back wrapping up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast station, studio, and corporate offices in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Exonation Shane Sirois is our special guest. His website is trueghost.com. Shane, tell us about your scariest event, your scariest encounter, your scariest experience as a paranormal investigator.
Well, not to be a kill was I absolutely never get scared, because if you do as an investigator, then you shouldn't be doing it, and because you could fall victim yourself, because these things want you to be fearful. But I can tell you, whenever I see a child being bothered, or elderly, I get you try to keep you can't have negative emotions, so you can't be fearful, and you can't get angry either, because they also react to that. So but when I see a child or an elderly being bothered, it really gets to me. And I could tell you a quick story.
Sure, go ahead.
Of this, I was contacted by this lady. She was 51 years old, from southern Connecticut by the ocean, and her mom, who was in her 70s, was being attacked at night. Something would come into her room, grab her by her ankles, pull her down towards the foot of the bed, and she was also being sexually molested and assaulted by whatever this entity was. And so this one time, the daughter slept over the house, wrapped her leg over her mom, because she said she never saw anything over there, but she just wanted to make her mom feel comfortable. She said, "And Shane, I saw a head rise up from the bottom of the sheets and start sliding up towards us, and I whipped the sheets off, and there was nothing there. But the mother she'd be assaulted, and she would hear other things running around in the room. So I basically went over there. She had two other famous groups and one famous female that tried to help them, and it didn't work. So I went there asked her, when did this all start happening? We couldn't, we're getting back to that. And it all started happening after her husband passed away. He was a diabetic, double amputee. It required a lot of caregiving for him. And so that occupied her. And once he passed away, she had no one to talk to during the day. She fell back on bad memories. And those bad memories were her father,
Wow.
her whole life, while she was a child, starting at a very, very young age, would molest her, and he would crawl into her room on all fours, grab her by the ankles, and slide her down towards the bottom of the bed and molest her. And that's exactly what this entity was doing. And that to me was just stuff like that. That gets to me. You know what I mean? And
I sure do.
And but we got rid of it, and I went there. I spent about an hour and a half with them, and they haven't seen or felt anything since.
Okay, now let me try and encapsulate this for our listeners. If you fear the paranormal, or if you fear that there is the possibility that an entity or a parasitic entity or some other source of supernatural existence may attack you, may present themselves to you, may exhibit paranormal activity, and if you're afraid of this, you are more susceptible to being victimized by this side of the paranormal. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I've helped so many groups. There's all these paranormal groups, with the popularity of the shows that kicked up, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They everyone thought that they could watch these shows and, I can do that, so hey, I can go be paranormal research. Well, those shows, none of them really operate on the high level. Like they really just do. They're just gathering. They're trying to gather evidence, but they're not treating homes. They don't know how to, and not too many people were really trained or know how to do that,
yeah.
including clergy. Now, so they say, okay, well, if they can do that, I can do that, and so many groups, they form, and everyone thinks it's going to be like Scooby-Doo. We're going to have fun. It's exciting, and then there's that one person usually in a group that is just so afraid, but they're just going along with it. They're always the one that comes home with something, some kind of an attachment, and it's now this thing is going on in their home, and now I have to go in and help them. And so I've helped so many other groups, other investigators, throughout the years, and I help other people on their cases too. Like when they get something, they don't know how to deal with it, and I've been helping a lot of other groups for their clients to give them peace.
So would that mean if someone really doesn't believe that the supernatural is real, or if someone is a total skeptic, that they will not encounter a paranormal entity, whether it's negative or positive?
It makes it less likely, because think about it, like people that don't believe never encounter anything, and it's because they're not like tuning themselves to that. And once you start giving attention to something, you're telling them that you will interact, and so they will come around and they will try to capitalize on that. So there's people that just don't believe, and for the parasitic entities, they're like, it's a waste of time, but they still might, from time to time, depending on if they have something that makes them vulnerable, the parasitic entity still might pop in and try to see what they get out of them. But if these people are just really strong in their disbelief, they'll try to rationalize it, and it won't progress. But absolutely, we are definitely participants in this. In the interaction, we have everything to do with what goes on, and we do control it. And that's what I tell my people that I help is, you are absolutely 100% in control of this thing's ability to stick around. They're not in control of you, but people let them be in control. I can't go in this room, after 10 o'clock because that's when it's active. So you don't let them run your lives. That's when they got you. You have to be in power. You got to be in power of yourself. You have to be in control of your emotions and who you are, and be positive and love. These things don't like love. They don't like positive things, and they don't love love. They hate love. And and what I found too is, the strongest emotions, love is definitely one of the strongest emotions and energies out there, and this is so important for all of us to remember. But you think the opposite of that would be hate, and I absolutely believe after dealing with these things, the almost the equivalent of the strength of an emotional energy is not hate, it's fear. Fear is very, very strong, and it can, disrupt everything. It can disrupt, countries. It can disrupt our personal lives. It can disrupt our careers. It can disrupt everything, and that's what they're doing.
Based on your experience and the number of years that you've been working in the paranormal, are people who are religiously orientated less to have a paranormal experience than those who are not religious believers?
This is funny, but there's some people that are religious, so they sometimes hear what they want to hear. But let me explain. The worst cases I've ever done, and some of the worst cases in history, were all people that were religious. And I'll tell you why. There's so many religions that are fear-based. It's not based on, and it should be. That's what religion is, right? Like it should be based on love and positive. Well, a lot of them use fear. Like I remember I was in an office somewhere. I don't know if it was a dentist's office or somewhere, but there was a comic book and it was about Halloween. I'm reading it. It was really good. It had my attention until I got to the end. And these kids that were going trick-or-treating at the very end, those kids were engulfed in flames and they're screaming and they're on fire. And I'm like, that's horrible. And it was from a church. And I think that was the worst thing. And that's how a lot of these religions tend to go. They use fear to keep you from doing bad things, but it also, and so some of the worst possession cases came from teenagers that come from a dysfunctionally religious background, parents that were obsessively religious and always threw it down their throat. If you do this, you're going to burn in hell. And next thing you know, these kids are, they're becoming supposedly possessed. Most of the time, not true, but definitely they're disturbed in some way. But also all kinds of activity happen in the homes because these entities are picking up on that. They're like, we know we can get the ultimate rise out of them because they're so afraid of the evil stuff, because that's what their religion is teaching, that it's, and so they become targeted. And what I tell people is like, if religion was going to work to get rid of the entity, why did it not work when they were religious in the first place to circumvent it? And so there's a different component. Religion is great, but there's a different component here. There's something else that it's not being addressed through that technique. And that's what I tried to discover. And I started to realize the religion works when it has an effect on the afflicted, not on the entity. And so I started to play with that. And that's how I've been able to help everybody without a fail. And that's not I have no ego at all. I'm lucky and I'm fortunate because I enjoy helping people. Hey
Shane, the hour's gone by very fast. Thanks so much for being with us tonight and for helping us try to make sense of what is actually going on in the world of the paranormal. Look forward to having you back on the show in the near future.
Thanks, I can't wait.
You take care of yourself. Have a great weekend, buddy.
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Exonation, Shane Sirois has been my guest this hour. www.trueghost.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour, as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So whatever you do, don't go away.